I am. Hi, I'm Tara Shannon, and welcome to T.A.R.A Sessions. Today, my guest is Miss Christina Stapper, who I have known for a really long time. We haven't had a chance to hang out in all those years, but we go way back. So when I was a piano teacher, when I first came to Russell, which was back in, 93? Holy cow, 93, because Adam was born in 92. Okay. So in 93, and I lived, did you teach with me when I was in the apartment or only when I was in Trillium?
On Trillium.
On Trillium, okay.
Yeah.
So I was a piano teacher. That's how I was helping to pay the bills. And I started getting lots and lots of students and then needed another teacher. So I put a call out. How did it even happen?
I don't even remember. I think, did we still have the Villager back then?
Yeah,
Did
probably.
you have a little ad in the Villager?
Probably.
My mother.
Yeah, would have said, hey.
Always says, hey, Christina.
This is great. So so you used to come to the house and climb over all my children in the basement, who were babies at the time, and then get to these, we had built these little studios.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 rooms.
Yeah, it was great. So that's how I got to know her. That was the beginning of our friendship. But I've also come to admire her work as an artist. So she does pottery. She is a photographer. And a musician. Anything else that you need to add to that?
Oh, I'm so well-rounded. There's so many things.
You're such a beautiful creative spirit. Like the work that you do is what I find is that who you are really shines through no matter what medium that you're using. So actually, Christina was the one who inspired me for the theme of this series, which we're calling Deconstruction. And it was a conversation that we were having outside, during the pandemic.
Fire and wine.
Could be inside, fire and wine outside, doing our distancing thing. And I was just talking about what I was going through and how my life was changing so much because I started making decisions about, that my own health and happiness really mattered and how difficult it was for me to actually make that stuff a priority because it changed the entire landscape of my life. I left my marriage. It changed how I looked at my own career and the choices that I was making in music and everything. And so it was pretty big. And we were talking about how when we come to know ourselves, we actually have to deconstruct the pillars we're built on and sort of reevaluate them and take them out and look at them and say, okay, do I want to keep this? Do I not want to keep this? Does this fit? Does it not fit? And we were both raised in the church, in a structured religion, which was a really big part of our lives. And so we got into this interesting conversation and I said, you know what? This would make such a great topic because a few other people that I talked to had gone through the same thing. So she agreed to come and chat with us here during T.A.R.A sessions about that process, about the deconstruction we have to go through to really discover who we really are. So tell me a bit about your childhood. What did your childhood look like?
So yeah, I, like you, we were raised Christian Reformed, which is a form of Protestantism. So I hate to use the word conservative because there's so many inflammatory, conservative versus liberal, blah, blah, blah. I was raised by beautiful parents who brought us to Christian Reformed Church. And it is on the conservative side of Christianity, I would say. But my parents definitely not so much. Yeah. So there was a pull and a push there. I was raised to think critically, to question a lot, but I went to Christian school, grade school and high school. We did the Sunday school into catechism as early teens, which is studying church doctrine and that kind of thing, before you do what it's called your profession of faith, which is your statement of faith that you do usually as a young teenager as well. So I did all of that, and I was a good girl, church musician. As soon as I could play in church, I played in church and played and sang in church, piano. And that was my gift, so that's what I had to give to church. So you do that, and that is a whole nother conversation. But
Very similar as you're talking. I was like, so I was raised in the Catholic religion, which is, they're both Christian, Catholicism and Protestantism. There was some split along the way, however it went. And so same thing. Those were my gifts. So that's what I did. I sang and played in church and grew up in that Catholic community. And it was my social circle. I loved going on Friday night to a youth group, you know, and there was this program called Walk with Jesus, and, you know, all of this. It was my entire connection. My best friends were there. So yeah, very similar.
Yeah. For me as well, yeah, young people through high school, that was your social outlet. Tuesday night was catechism, the more serious night. Thursday night was young people's. That's when you had a more social time. Yeah, but my whole circle, my whole identity was revolved around faith community.
So you got married and you have 3 beautiful children.
Yes, so I married my husband, who's still my husband. We're coming up 23 years, still happily married.
Amazing.
And that's a whole nother conversation too. Anyways.
We're going to do 100 series.
We struggled with infertility at the beginning of our marriage, but we have 3 beautiful children through that, and a whole nother whack. Again, another podcast.
Yeah, right, exactly. We each have such interesting stories, and we don't often get the chance to really talk about what we've learned and the perspectives and the challenges we've gone through. I mean, maybe to our close friends, but we're still always picking and choosing what we share with people and when, right? So that's why I love this format, you know, because it really gives you a chance to reflect on, you know, what you've gone through and share those pieces, because it's so helpful for other people to hear it.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of that over the last couple of weeks, kind of analyzing, you know, the word unraveling kind of comes to my head when I think about pieces that started to kind of fray.
Yeah.
And for me, that happened through high school, figuring out who I was, figuring out where did I fit, not just in my family, but in my church, in my social groups, in my, but then who was I? How do I reveal who I am to people around me? And parts of who I am don't fit with traditional church.
Right.
And
so it was as a teenager that you started to feel it?
I started to feel it, yeah. I definitely hid it away, did not embrace all of me, which leads to its own issues and stuff. And then getting married young, because you get married young. That's just what we did. Yeah. I think I had 13 weddings the year I got married. There was 13 other people. I couldn't make 2 of them because there were conflicts, but literally our honeymoon was heading to another wedding. So that's just what we did. We were all in our early 20s. We were all getting married. Then going into our marriage and just assuming that I would have children. I always wanted to be a mom. That was always my path. That was what I wanted to do, wanted to be. And then struggling with that and figuring out what our journey was to just have children. Again, that breaks up a lot of marriages, but for us, it brought us closer. But also through that being told, you're playing God, you know, getting that message.
Oh, wow. Because you looked for some support and some help from the medical community.
We went through fertility treatments.
Okay.
And so...
I didn't know you had gone through all that.
Yeah. We went through just basic fertility stuff for our first son, and then we thought, we've got it. We know the formula. This is good. And we did that 11 times, I think, after he was born. So there's a 5-year gap between our firstborn and our twins. Yeah. And the twins were born through IVF.
Okay. So you were getting from your community, and the community that you were still involved with and still connected to,
not from my immediate community, but from Christian community at large and family. Yeah. Not immediate family, but family outside who just even those little, not that they were meaning it again I like to take people, you know, with a grain of salt, but I also like to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody meant. No. But it's just this underlying judgment of...
Yes, and it's like we can get so locked down or that's what I think structure religion sometimes, there's some really beautiful things about it, but when you get really locked down in your ideology, and you're really rooted in that set of judgment because it's this perceived set of rules that you're supposed to follow, but when they're challenged, you know, they crumble pretty quick, because especially something like that, like, you know, you're playing God if that's the messaging you're getting. So basically the message is that if you're not meant to have children, then, you know, you're just not meant to have children.
Exactly.
So then I would go, Christina knows me well, I'm a very challenging personality, and say, okay, but by that logic, if I had a heart attack right now and dropped to the ground, then does medicine intervene and try to restart my heart?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Where do you draw the line? Where do
the
you,
line?
and then that's always which is why I smile at people, you know, when they have those kinds of statements.
And then the gift thing, like the doctors and the medicine and the scientists and all of those people who were inspired to tackle those problems and came up with solutions so that people could have the joy of children, all this stuff. Are those gifts not honored? Those are the gifts that come.
Yes.
Like there's so many, like
100%.
You can, like you said, unraveling is such a beautiful word, because you can pull on the threads and say, you know, wait a minute. For me, I was much later. Like I admire the fact that you were more aware, like in your teenage years and stuff. I always felt like I didn't belong. Like I always felt I had this, you know, this feeling with me that I was not wanted. I was kind of born with that. And it kind of followed me everywhere. But for me, ironically, it took having daughters for me to start seeing things differently. So my first 5 are boys. And it wasn't until I had my daughters that I started hearing what was being taught.
Oh my word, yes.
Within that religion in a totally different light. And I found myself saying things like to the girls on my way out of Mass, that stuff you heard about the XYZ, just ignore that part, because you know, because you are valued and you're equal and you're beautiful and you are not the reason for the lustful thoughts of men, stuff like that. But it took my daughters, you know, for me seeing it through their eyes, for me to start, because I had no sense of self, like no self-worth. I hadn't figured that part out yet. So it would never have triggered for me, because I didn't believe that I mattered yet. So I would have just kept floating along. But my motherhood kicked in and went, wait a minute, I don't want them going through life believing some of these things. So that's what it took for me. Do you remember, was there a moment for you?
I definitely, for sure, had that. Being a mother changes so many things, right? So when my oldest was very young, we started a little church plant. So I keep saying that's the community that ruined me for church forever, because it was so beautiful. Oh, it was so... it was what I imagined a faith community could be.
Okay, walk me through what that is. What is a church plant? What does that entail?
So in our denomination of churches, you can do these what they call sister churches or daughter churches or whatever. Because the church is female. Did you know that? Anyways,
well, I like the idea, but no, I hadn't heard that.
Anyways, so you basically, a pastor kind of leads a community, and it's all about evangelizing.
Okay.
And
so spreading the word, spreading the gospel,
spreading the gospel, that kind of thing. So, and yet we as it was a very small group of us, probably 14, 15 people, with our babies, basically deciding we didn't want to do church the way we were doing church anymore. Okay. We wanted it to be something different. We wanted it to be something inclusive. We wanted it to be something that looked different for our kids, looked different in the community. Yeah. And again, all of us were driving half an hour into the city to go to church and coming back. And again, it's the unraveling of what is community. Right. What is all of that stuff. So this church, it was a beautiful time. I feel like it was a stepping stone for me, a stepping stone out. Right. And so I decided, for me, it was when I was 40, it was around when I was 40, started to feel like just very disconnected from what was being shared. And again, having a teenager, for me, it was not just having kids, it was having a teenager and him experiencing life. He was going to Christian school that I had gone to, and my husband had gone to Christian high school. And we found we were having a lot of discussions deconstructing what he was hearing at school again, right? And talking about different worldviews and different choices that we might not have made if we had known differently.
Yeah. The wider lens.
Yes, a much wider lens.
Yeah.
A more beautiful lens. A much more
love.
expansive, more love, more inclusion, more, this whole idea of there's room at the table for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a problem with language around how the church views sexuality. Yes.
Like your insight, and this is what I was going through too, is how I felt about my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And that was the language I was using at the time.
Yeah.
Now I would say all that is.
Yes.
Universal energy, life force. I would even say Holy Spirit, to describe what is life. And really it's love. At the time I was using the word God because it's the language that I was raised with. But when my inside relationship and personal relationship with what I understood that to be and my personal experiences and just witnessing miracles and, having this incredible family and these children, and then the resonance of that or the vibration of that just didn't line up anymore with what was being said.
Yes.
Like, you know me, you know how argumentative I am. And so my logic is what saved me. My logic got me out of the conditioning because I could start to see things that the pattern didn't work anymore.
Yes.
There was so many contradictions everywhere all the time. And so I started to question. I'd be like, wait a minute. I remember, and the priests were lovely. It's not about any particular person and I love the memories that I have being part of the Catholic community. I ran a musical event there for 12 years. I loved, and I learned so much about myself. So I'm so grateful for it. But you can grow beyond it and expand. And it's not like I'm better than anybody or anything like that. It's just that your experience of love, it just becomes wider. And you cannot live within the rigidity of those rules. They stop making sense. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense because if it's going to cause somebody to feel unloved, game over.
Yeah.
So if you make a ruling that homosexuality is a sin or all that language and stuff, you are hurting. That's hurting somebody. Yeah. They will feel unloved, unaccepted, unwelcomed. Yeah. And so I just couldn't anymore. And I was just like, so I started off by speaking my mind. I don't know if you did this too, but because my girlfriends and I would talk about this, and I'd be like, I'm out of here. I can't anymore. Like, I can't be quiet anymore. And so there was sort of this idea that, well, speak up inside the church and maybe the change will come from that. Oh, no. It didn't want to change. It believed that it was perfectly fine exactly the way it was. So then I ended up going, but I don't know, did you experience the same kind of, I had a tremendous amount of grief because you're not just leaving this thing you do on Sundays. It was my entire community. Yes. It was all of my best friends. Yes. It was music. It was everything. And so I grieved the loss of that. And it was also difficult for my friends as well because there is an underlying, you're either in or you're out.
Oh my word, Tara.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, for me, absolutely. I had this dissonance between what I was experiencing or how I was experiencing God, like you said, the Holy Spirit, expansiveness. I was creating quiet time in my life. I always struggled with the idea of prayer and meditation and all that stuff. So learning to meditate, which to me is prayer. That's my prayer time. The closer I got personally to God, or whatever you want to call that, the further I felt from my faith community. Yeah. The more I didn't want to be there, the more it didn't fit with. Yeah. So that personal experience. That, again, I feel like I was just growing. I was just expanding. Yeah. But then that decision to leave, is sad. You're saying goodbye to a community, and sometimes, like for me, it was just a gradual fade. Yeah. And then you realize, oh wait, so-and-so hasn't called me in 6 months. I haven't talked to, so what was community? Right. What was, right? You kind of figure out
what were the ties, the actual ties.
It matters what I believe and how I believe and how I pray and how I do, like all these things. So I just keep saying, if there's conditions on how I need to have faith, I'm done.
Well, unconditional love. It's like it's like unconditional. There are no conditions, and the freedom to be who you are. Like it didn't. If you truly want to like unfurl your wings, you know what I mean, and truly expand and step into the miracle of you and who you are and the uniqueness of you, there has to be space to do that.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, you know, find that uncomfortable sometimes, and maybe that's why
it's comfortable to be in the box for a lot of people.
It's very safe.
They don't want to think about the what ifs, because it is, you do have to do, because I had those times of, okay, so my husband and kids are still all going to this community. I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing. My husband fully supported my decision to not go. He at that point still needed to go. He has since stopped as well, but he's on his own journey. I can't be that for him, and he can't be it for me. But the what ifs, right? Like, so now what does Sunday morning look like for my kids? What does, you know, all these questions, all these, you know, and to be able to slowly work through that and let that go has been a beautiful process. COVID has helped.
Right?
There was
a blessing to it.
It was just take back. So for a while, I actually took a job at a small little church.
Did you?
For 2 years.
Okay.
Doing their choir program, which was fun.
Yeah.
But then COVID hit and the church closed. But it was also, I realized how much I took that job to say that, yes, I still go to church. Because my kids still went to Christian education at that point. And when you go to Christian education, it's all about, well, where do you worship?
Yeah.
Where do you, you know, how are you fitting in? How are you, you know? So I was like, well, I have a job. I go to church every Sunday, and I did. And then when COVID hit and the church decided to close for 2 months, I just said, okay, that's my, I'm finished now.
I know who I am.